Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, members of the C-17 team, please welcome your President and Chief Executive Officer, Harry Stonecipher. Representing Team C-17, Betty Cavanaugh, Final Assembly Inspector on C-17 aircraft and an over 40-year employee of McDonnell Douglas. And the Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, Bill Clinton. Men and women of Team C-17, Harry Stonecipher, President and Chief Executive Officer of McDonnell Douglas.
Mr. President, the men and women of McDonnell Douglas are proud to welcome you to the home of the C-17 Globemaster III. A year ago, the C-17 entered service. Now it is proving itself in the most critical test of all in helping keep the peace. Bringing home and hope, bringing hope to a war-ravaged land, the C-17 has played a pivotal role in the deployment of peacekeeping troops and equipment to Bosnia. President Clinton paid a visit to Bosnia on January 13th of this year. Who delivered him to Bosnia? The U.S. Air Force did it, and they did it aboard a C-17 built right here in our facilities. Today, we are honored with the presence of the 42nd President of the United States, Bill Clinton, the man from Hope, Arkansas. Mr. President, no one has ever done a better job of describing the C-17 than you did in Bosnia when you called it the world's best moving van. We thank you for your stalwart support of this program over the past 3 years, and we also appreciate the assistance of you and your administration in securing overseas orders for McDonnell Douglas fighters, helicopters, and commercial jetliners. Across the runway, on the other side of Long Beach Municipal Airport, we have our commercial aircraft assembly facilities. Because of your support, thousands of people in those facilities are working on a large order for new jetliners for Saudi Arabia. Your administration has worked hard to help establish a level playing field for U.S. companies in international competition. With your help, U.S. companies continue to occupy a strong leadership position in global aerospace markets. Mr. President, your support is highly valued by all of us at McDonnell Douglas, and as a sign and symbol of our appreciation, it is my pleasure to present to you a C-17 jacket. He's always been on our team, and it is now my distinct pleasure to introduce another friend of the C-17 and a person who needs no introduction to you, Senator Barbara Boxer.
We are all here today to celebrate a wonderful and remarkable achievement by all of you. I think, frankly, we have in front of us, Mr. President, the greatest pool of aerospace industry talent ever assembled in one place at one time. Now, today, it's easy to forget that there were times that the C-17's future didn't look so bright. But the President knew that you could turn it around. And the President and the Pentagon gave McDonnell Douglas the chance to prove it. And I know every worker on the line knew the words of Deputy Secretary Deutsch, who said, "Whether we buy all the way to 120 depends on the performance of McDonnell Douglas," and the performance of McDonnell Douglas was spectacular. So, all of you should be so proud of the work you've done and the support you've given our troops in Bosnia. And I know that every American soldier who has a tent, a winter coat, or a hot meal shipped out on a C-17 would like to shake each and every one of your hands. And Mr. President, I know that we all thank you for being such a friend of the C-17 and such a friend of American workers, for their job security, their health security, their pension security, their children and their families. Mr. President, we love you and we welcome you to Southern California.
Men and women of Team C-17, your program manager, Don Kozlowski.
Good morning. It goes without saying that we are all very, very proud of you today and have been for the last couple of years and will continue to be in the future. What you've done with the C-17 over the last few years has been nothing short of magnificent. It goes without saying that this program has drawn the attention of the highest office in the land, and we're pleased that that attention has come from the successes of the program. You made it happen. We need to recognize our partners on the program who have made us the success which we are. This team includes our suppliers and subcontractors here in California and across the country, and some across the water. Our team includes the men and women of the U.S. Air Force at Charleston Air Force Base, who worked with every step of the way to make the C-17 not only a successful program, but a very successful airplane. I want to recognize Major General Ron Kadish, the director of the C-17 Program Office, who's listening in, Colonel Gene Kluter and his people from DPRO. They all played key roles in making this a model Department of Defense acquisition program. We also owe a lot to our teammates in St. Louis, Macon, Georgia, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Mesa, Arizona, Huntington Beach here in California, and not the least, our friends across the way here over at DAC, as well as our key suppliers such as Northrop Grumman down in Dallas. While a lot of us that you refer to as suits were worrying about program issues over the last few years, the rest of you have gone on with your jobs and gotten better at them and produced some very, very good airplanes. We knew they were good airplanes when we went into the RMNA event last year, and we far surpassed all the expectations going into that event. But people say you just don't know how well an airplane really performs until you put it in service. You made that happen too. The Air Force has put it into service in Operation Joint Endeavor in Bosnia, and you know what happened. The C-17 performed just as well in operational conditions as it did in test conditions. Again, you made that happen too. The C-17 has carried more cargo than any other type of aircraft operating in the Bosnian area. more than 40% of the tonnage. It's carried more passengers than any other aircraft. It's flown humanitarian relief supplies to Sarajevo to help the embattled population there. It's flown supplies and engineering equipment into Hungary to pave the way for the forces to enter Bosnia. It's flown combat equipment into Tuzla to give our U.S. forces the means to keep the peace. And it's done it in some of the world's worst weather conditions you can imagine. At the end of a long supply line into constricted airports. But that's the job we designed and built it to do, and that's exactly what it's doing. You made that happen. One of those passengers that flew into the area on the C-17 is with us here today, and I'd like to give him a memento of that flight. President Clinton, would you join me here, please? This is a model of the airplane that he flew in. It was a great honor for us when you chose to fly in the C-17 into Hungary, Bosnia, and Croatia, making the C-17 Air Force One for a day. Since you are the first president to travel on the C-17, we'd like to present you with the model of this aircraft that you flew on. We call it P2. It has the actual serial number 80266. We hope this will remind you fondly of that day on the Globemaster 3.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And now I'd like to turn your attention to one of the people who we're very proud to have on our team. She is one of the most senior and most respected members of the United Auto Workers workforce here in Long Beach, and that's Betty Cavanaugh. Ms. Cavanaugh is an inspector in final assembly and a 44-year veteran of McDonnell Douglas. She's also turning 67, and she's just thinking about maybe retiring soon. She said if we built another good one, she'd stick around. You got to remember, this young lady crawls in and out of the fuel tanks, and I hear a lot of young folks saying how hard it is. Not to her. She's just great. She's shown strong dedication to every program on which she has worked, and we're proud to have her represent the C-17 to introduce the President. Betty? So be
Okay.
careful.
2.510-17. Mr. President, I first started shooting rivets here on the Globemaster 124 at McDonnell Douglas in 1951. Harry Truman was president, and I was 22 years old. Today, 44 years later, my hands are still helping to build our newest airplane, the aircraft behind you, the Globemaster 3. Every time the troops have gone overseas, they have been supported by aerospace workers like the thousand standing before you, men and women. During the war, the people like to call me Rosie the Riveter. Well, you can just call me Betty the Riveter. Fresh after the war and full of hope of new opportunities, it seemed we would be building airplanes here forever. We've had some tough times, and the thanks to our teams of management and labor, working with government, and your leadership, it now looks like we will. I am a Republican. I have built many airplanes for the Republican administration. But I have never been more proud than watching you in Bosnia walk out the back of a plane I helped to build. We know how you like to fly the C-17, Mr. President, and if you want, we can paint one blue and white and make a full-time Air Force One. and I'm sure Mr. Stonecipher will understand. We are reminded every day of our pride in our unions, our work, and our quality when we watch our soldiers unload their planes to help keep peace around the world. The Globemaster that sits behind you will fly to South Carolina, take its place among the planes, help bring the peace to the globe. Before the engine starts, remove the flight. I got lost, kids. Remove it. Since the airplane will still be yours, I'll give it to you. Ladies and gentlemen, men and women of the C-17 team, I am proud to present the owner of the newest C-17, our Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States, Mr. William Jefferson Clinton. President Clinton.
I got a little twisted up there. Good for you. Oh, thank you.
They love you.
Thank you.
Senator Boxer, Congressman Horn, Mayor O'Neill, Mr. Stonecipher, Mr. Kozlowski, Betty Kavanaugh. I'm glad she cleared up how old she was when she came to work here. I thought I would have to charge McDonnell Douglas with violating the child labor laws. I also thank you, Betty, for the ribbon and for the hug. That's the most fun I ever had, hugging a Republican. I want to thank you seriously, all of you, for being here and for the work you've done. Before I go forward, I think we should all give a hand to the Lakewood High School band who played for us today and did such a fine job. Thank you very much. Let me say I value the jacket. I value the wonderful model of the plane I flew to Bosnia. I value this ribbon, and I will save it always. But most important, I value the hard work that all of you have done to make the C-17 possible and to make our country stronger. The C-17 is the finest military transport plane in the world, or as I said in non-jargon, the best moving van in the world. It was forged with an extraordinary partnership between the Department of Defense and the workers and management here at McDonnell Douglas to cut costs, to increase efficiency, to make the C-17 program a model for public-private sector teamwork. When I became president, I had advocated the C-17. It was obvious to me we needed it for our national defense. There were people in Washington who said the program was in trouble and could not be fixed. Well, you fixed it. And because you fixed it, our country is stronger today, and we all owe you a deep debt of gratitude. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, a few weeks ago in my State of the Union address, I tried to look with you into the future to describe the 7 challenges our nation will have to meet if we're going to provide the American dream for all of our people who are willing to work for it in a new, highly competitive global economy dominated by information and technology. And if we're going to pull our country together here at home, and finally, if we're going to continue to lead the world for peace and freedom and prosperity. Those challenges were building stronger families, providing better educational opportunities to all Americans, strengthening the economic security of this country through more good jobs and access to affordable health care, secure pensions, and lifetime training, taking back our streets from crime and gangs and violence and drugs, continuing to protect our environment while we grow the economy, reinventing our government so that it is smaller and less bureaucratic, but stronger when we need it to be strong, and finally continuing to lead the world for peace and freedom and prosperity. If you look at what we have come here to celebrate today, and if you consider the work being done here on the civilian aircraft that Mr. Stonecipher mentioned, it represents a number of those challenges being met in the way that I believe America has to meet all of its challenges, not by pointing fingers at one another, but by working together. We have here an example of America doing what is necessary to preserve our security and to lead the world. It happens also to provide a large number of people good jobs and security for their families. Where the civilian aircraft are being made, we have a good example of America leading the world toward prosperity and providing economic security for families. And in both places, it happened because there was a partnership. Why do we have a strong defense today? To defend our immediate interest and our borders, but also because we learned in the 20th century that if we want to keep America free and safe, we have to stand up for freedom and safety and security and peace and prosperity around the world. We can't be the world's policeman. We can't be everywhere. We can't do everything. But when we can make a difference and when it is consistent with our values and our interests, we have to try. That's what the effort in Bosnia is all about. It's also true that if we are going to live in that kind of world where people like you have a chance to have good jobs because we engage in and do well in global competition, we have to reach out and not retreat. We have to break down walls, not build them up. That's why those jobs are on the other side of this pavement. Later today, I will meet with the new Prime Minister of Japan, Mr. Hashimoto. Our relationship is beginning to work better than it ever has because we are beginning to work together toward common goals. Our partnership is the strongest force for peace and freedom in the Asia-Pacific region. We've worked on a lot of issues that you now don't have to worry about, from getting North Korea to give up its dangerous nuclear program, the thing I was told was the #1 security problem facing our country when I became president, to Bosnia, where the Japanese are helping, even though it's a long way from home for them, to tackling the new threats that know no borders, drug trafficking, global crime, and terrorism, which sadly has affected both the Japanese and the American people. It is in this environment that you have to see the discussion about our trade relations. So often when I hear people talk about trade, they act as if there are only two alternatives. We just open our borders and let what happen happens, or we close our borders because we think we're not being treated fairly. There is another alternative, and it's the right one. We should be pushing for free but fair trade, for tough but fair trade. We have concluded over 200 trade agreements since I've been in office. We've worked hard to get contracts like the one that will benefit McDonnell Douglas by the sales of commercial aircraft to Saudi Arabia. With Japan alone, we have concluded 20 agreements covering everything from auto parts to medical equipment, with a simple premise. If the United States markets are open to Japanese products, Japan's markets should be open to America's products. But what I want... In the last 3 years, jobs in this country related to exports to Japan have increased by over 20%. 167,000 new American jobs. In California, more than 250,000 jobs depend upon trade with Japan. For the first time in history, rice farmers in California can sell rice in Japan. We are moving in the right direction. We have got to continue to take the right path. If you want your country to lead for peace and freedom and prosperity, the answer is neither to be uncritically in favor of free trade, nor to be for pulling up the rug and closing our borders. The answer is to be for trade that is free and fair, so everybody has a fair chance to grow in the global economy. That is what our country should stand for. And let me say again, we can only do that if we do what you did here to turn this program around and make it the finest transport airplane in aviation history. We have to do it together. If you ask me what is the single most significant lesson I have learned as your president in the last 3 years, it is simply this. Whenever we work together and grow together and live together and learn together, America never loses. And when we are divided, we defeat ourselves. We must do better at working together. That is the answer to our future. When I became president and I had advocated the C-17 and problems became apparent in the program, there were those who said, why don't you just abandon this? After all, the Cold War is over, we're downsizing the military, just forget about it, walk away from it. But it seemed to me that the fact that we were downsizing the military made a stronger argument for the C-17. The more we have fewer forces, more concentrated in fewer areas, the more we need the kind of airlift capacity that is given by this plane. The fact that we are in the post-Cold War era, where we need to move people in a hurry, in unpredictable ways, under very difficult circumstances, shows that we did the right thing, you and I and our friends in Congress in both parties, to stand up for the C-17. I thank Senator Boxer, Senator Feinstein, Congressman Horn, Congresswoman Harman, who is not with us today but who has fought for this program, and all others who made it a bipartisan American effort to say that we have to have the capacity to project America's power quickly and decisively and safely. This plane has delivered on its promise to the American people. We've had airlifters before that could carry very heavy loads over long hauls, and we've had airlifters before that could land on the most primitive airfields in the worst weather conditions. But we have never had a plane that could do both things until the C-17. And let me say, I wish every single one of you, because you've worked so hard to build this plane, could have had the same experience I had to fly in the plane under conditions that would test its capabilities. When I visited our troops in Bosnia who are doing such an extraordinary job to help peace take hold there, the plane I usually fly on, that other Air Force One she talked about, was too big to land in Tuzla. And so I flew into Aviano, Italy, and took my C-17 as Air Force One for the day. The first thing that impressed me was the plane's remarkable cargo capacity. Between my staff, the members of Congress, there were a huge number, almost 40 I think, I can't remember a lot of them anyway, security and the press, and there was a really large number of the press, some of them are back there with us today. There were more than 100 people sitting on those hard red molded plastic seats. I must say that I wish someone my size could become the test for those seats in the future. We also carried 2 Army Humvees, lots of bags of mails, 210 cases of Cokes, and 5,000 Hershey bars. And there was a lot of room to spare. Not only that, even with all the press and the politicians there, the plane carried all the hot air that we could generate in that long flight. I spent a lot of time on the flight deck talking with the crew and seeing what the C-17 can do. The loadmaster, Chief Master Sergeant Mark Smith, told me about his pride in the plane and its capabilities. Those crews are your best advertisement. They are grateful to you. You made their work possible, you made it more fun, and you made it safer. And they all talk about it. He reminded me about how skeptical people were that we would risk the C-17 in an environment as hostile as Bosnia. He said, Mr. President, people didn't really think you'd give us these planes. We allocated 12 to the Bosnia mission. They said, we didn't think you would give us these planes. I mean, it's new, it's expensive. And I said, well, that's why we built it. I thought we were supposed to use it, not show it. As you know, the fog can be very bad in Bosnia, so we had to fly over Tuzla the first time, go to Hungary, have our meetings in Hungary, see the troops there, come back to Tuzla. They told us that the weather was getting so bad, we absolutely had to get out of there. We were coming close to nightfall. Our plane was parked near the middle of the runway. We only had about 4,000 feet of tarmac on which to take off. The aircraft commander, Major Frederick Cianciola, said we wouldn't even need half that much. I thought he was kidding. I said, you're kidding, aren't you? He said, buckle up, Mr. President. He then threw 160,000 pounds of thrust into those 4 Pratt & Whitney engines. 12 seconds and 1,800 feet of runway later, we were in the air, thanks to you. The C-17 has only flown 25% of the missions in Bosnia, but it has carried over 40% of the cargo and more passengers than any other transport. At the very start of the operation, you remember terrible weather and flooding held up the construction of the Sava River Bridge, the main land link for our troops to Bosnia. I might add the engineers who did that did a magnificent job too. It's the longest bridge span built like that since World War II. So we had to load the pontoon sections onto flatbeds, and we rolled them onto the C-17s. The plane set down near the Sava, the flatbeds rolled off, the bridges were built, and our troops could move into Bosnia. This past fall, when Hurricane Marilyn devastated the United States Virgin Islands, the C-17 was the only aircraft in our fleet able to land outsized cargo on undersized runways. C-17s flew 18% of our relief missions, but delivered 30% of the supplies, 30% of the medicines, 30% of the housing materials. Thousands of people came to see the C-17 as the savior from the skies. These exploits are fast becoming legendary, thanks to you. Now, let me just say a few words, if I might, about those of you who work here. As I have said before, after the first C-17s rolled off the production line, there were genuine concerns about cost overruns and scheduling delays. Everyone shared them, including people here at McDonnell Douglas. But you pitched in and you turned the program around instead of throwing up your hands and giving up. Working side by side with the Air Force, you made a great plane even better, and you did it for less. Now the flyaway cost of the C-17 has been cut in half. The C-17 parked behind me is the 12th aircraft in a row. I want to say that again. The 12th aircraft in a row you have produced not on schedule, but ahead of time, and we thank you. Just today, the Air Force delivered to McDonnell Douglas a contract for the production of the last 8 of the 40 C-17s originally requested, a contract worth $1.8 billion. Because of your extraordinary efforts and the exceptional performance of the C-17, I have today sent to Congress a letter seeking approval of a multi-year procurement for another 80 C-17s. This will be the longest and the largest multi-year defense contract ever. It will be worth more than $14 billion to McDonnell Douglas and more than 18,000 jobs to the state of California. It will save our taxpayers nearly $1 billion because we're ordering all the planes we need at once instead of a few at a time. Let me say a word of thanks to some of the people who made this possible, starting with Major General Ron Kadish, the Air Force's C-17 Program Director, Rudy De Leon, who's over here with me, our Undersecretary of the Air Force, to Harry Stonecipher and your Program Manager, Don Kozlowski, and to the members of Congress who supported this program so strongly. All of you have done a job very well. And let me say finally, thank you. I want you to remember, if you don't remember anything else about today except how many more planes you're going to build, how you turned the program around. The partnership between government and McDonnell Douglas, the partnership between management and labor, the understanding that there was a mission to perform, that it had to be performed by everybody pulling together and working together. And I want you to think about every single challenge your country faces. Just look around the sea of faces here today. Is there another nation where the head of the nation's government could go and speak to a group like this and see so much diversity in the crowd among the workers? I think not. Is there another place where you could see so many people from so many different backgrounds, so many different walks of life, so many different religious faiths working together toward a common goal? What you did here and the way you did it is a model for the way America must meet the other challenges we face. We have a clear choice facing us in every single area of human endeavor. If you want everybody in your country to be able to have a good job and raise a strong family, if you believe everybody ought to be able to send their children to good schools, if you think everybody should enjoy the benefits of a clean environment, if you believe people ought to have safe streets and that they shouldn't have to worry about their children and their children's teachers being shot at the way the poor man in Los Angeles was wounded just a couple of days ago, if you believe that this country has to continue to lead the world toward peace and freedom, then you must understand that every single challenge we have has to be met the way you met the challenge of the C-17. When we pull together, when we work together, when we have a clear mission, we never lose. You won for America, and America can win in the future. Thank you, and God bless you all.